All right, I've been talking for about a minute and realized I didn't unmute myself. So there's a good lesson to be learned. So if you can hear me, just nod so I can see that I'm getting across to you. Thank you. We did mute all participants. That's just cut back on feedback. You can still raise your hand or let me know if you have questions, or better yet, post something in the chat, and then during our Q&A period, we'll make sure we get to that. Everyone should right now see my screen, which says how to engage remote students. Can I do the nod test one more time? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Well, welcome to this webinar. I am Adam Barger from the Studio for Teaching and Learning Innovation. I'm joined by Mary from Libraries and a bunch of our other colleagues. Today, I think we have something like 40-some people in. 68, keeps jumping. So we're going to do our best to get through this. And as we progress through the webinar, just feel free to submit questions via the chat box or wait to the end of the presentation. We'll have Q&A time. Our goal is to have about 30 minutes of instruction, talking about some options, and then about 15 minutes of Q&A. And like I said, we do have colleagues from IT and Libraries joining us. So between the three of us, we will have an answer that works for you. Should mention right off the bat that most of what we highlight here is about using technology to help you teach remotely. We recognize that not everyone's going to have the best access to technology, including your students. So all the solutions that we're presenting will have a low-tech option that we can talk to you about more individually. And in addition, we're working on a kind of low-tech teaching guide that we're going to publish on our site as soon as it's done. So we recognize this is not the perfect solution, but we're doing our best here. So when it comes to student engagement, what are we even talking about? That's a good question. So this is our working definition. I'll give you a second to read that and think about how it might influence what you're getting ready to do over the next few weeks. Essentially, we're talking about connection and connecting in multiple different ways. Students learn when they can make connections, and students learn when they are forced to process things and think about things. And it's closely related to this idea of humanizing. So what does it mean to humanize remote teaching so it doesn't feel like you're just teaching to a screen? So this is one of the most important aspects of teaching remotely. It's finding ways to humanize the experience for students. William and Mary students live and learn in an environment together where they are known and supported by the professors. They grapple with complex ideas. And so this could be an abrupt shift for many of them, but we also know that our students are very resilient, and so they're in this journey with you. So today we're going to explore how to put a personal touch in your remote teaching efforts to keep students engaged. Because we believe, and in our experience, that students will miss that. Deep human connections are important. It's a natural part of campus. We can't reproduce it perfectly, but we're going to take our best shot to give you some strategies to keep you moving in the right direction. They might even miss working with their classmates, even though they are very vocal about group work sometimes and not wanting to collaborate. This is an important piece, and so we will focus a good chunk of our talk today on really how students can work with other students and how they can collaborate. And the primary tool is going to be Google's G Suite. So if you are not familiar with the G Suite, make sure you hang around for that portion of it. Some questions about how to raise your hand. You can click on the participate screen at the bottom. Thanks, Mike, for helping out there. And lots of people are raising their hands. All right, so before we get into our strategies, let's go ahead and see if we can address some of the questions here.
I think they may just be trying out raising their hands.
Oh, okay. In that case, we'll keep right on going. And I'll try to keep an eye on the chat every couple slides here. Thanks, Mike. Okay, so here is the framework we're going to ask you to think about. And it's an easy way to remember the different ways students engage in the learning process. So primarily these three pathways, and there might be more, but if you think about these three and try to account for them in your remote teaching, you're going to be in pretty good shape. So how do students engage with their instructor? That would be you. How do students engage with the content, the material that they're learning? And how do students engage with each other? That student-to-student collaboration. So none of us will find exactly the right solution the first time here, but the key to all of this is be willing to try some things, reflect on how they go, and adjust on the fly. And keep in mind that we will talk about some low-tech solutions as well. So consider these three aspects of engaging the learning process. Think about where you might need to make adjustments and see if any of these ideas we present today will be helpful. All right, let's start with student-instructor engagement. This is an important one. This will set the tone for how things go over the next few weeks. The relationship with the individual faculty member is one of the most important elements in building student engagement in both face-to-face and remote settings. Students learn best when they know that their faculty are approachable and sensitive to their needs. Blackboard provides tools to communicate. We have email. We have all kinds of things that will help you communicate. But the most important message is that we understand that each student has different pressures and challenges and issues that we care about, and we're going to try our best to respond to them. So let's first talk about communication, and then we'll talk about what we're calling empathy during this time. And we'll be talking specifically about these individual differences. So first, set some realistic and flexible expectations. Understand that students probably are not going to be able to, communicate in real time, and you aren't either. So set a standard. Maybe it's once a day or twice a day in terms of how often you will check your communication strategies, whether it be email or a message service, and stick to it and make sure they know that as well, and ask them to submit that same standard. We do recommend you use a quick survey to gather information about what they have in terms of technology, what their needs are, what their anxieties are. We're working on a draft survey that we can share that you could tweak and send out. We're just trying to figure out what platform to do that best in. But if nothing else, you can just put in an email or a Blackboard announcement, survey your students and see if they have any special circumstances or challenges that you should be aware of. They might not volunteer this information without you asking. So it's a good practice to do this. And like I mentioned, consider low-tech learning activities. Reading and writing activities, reflection activities. Not everything has to be synchronous. Not everything has to be a lecture. So think about how you can convert some of your current lectures or current teaching materials into something that's more low-tech. It could even be a scanned reading. It could be something like that to give them a backup. If you can communicate your materials or distribute your materials in more than one platform, that's even better. So giving them multiple pathways to engage. So this is all part of communication up front as soon as you can to all of your students. Close related is, for lack of a better word, empathy, just trying to understand the individual circumstances that your students are going through. So don't be afraid to let them know that you care about the situation. You're going to try your best to be sensitive to it. Some reassurance might be good, especially if you are teaching a high stakes course, a required course, or a course that has lots of moving parts. I could see how this could lead to some anxiety. So just let them know that you understand and you care and you're going to try your best. Be willing to renegotiate. So as things change, you might have to change what you're expecting from them. Maybe instead of a certain format of assessment, you go to a different format. Maybe you're moving to an essay test or to more short answer. Or maybe you even consider, if it's a small course, one-on-one oral interviews or discussions. So negotiate as the conditions change. As we all know, they changed even just today in terms of what's expected of us. So we have to be as nimble as possible. As we think about being responsive to individual differences, this is obviously gets harder and harder as the classes get bigger. You teach a large class. But we do know that many families are going to be under some pretty serious financial stress. Students might be worried about what's happening in the future. Many students count on campus jobs or other employment, and so they might have some insecurities there. And so as much as you can provide support for your students to take the many steps, the small steps to move through the course, the better. The whole key here is just focusing on the student experience and think about it from their perspective as much as possible. Check our chat here. All right. All right, now moving on to student content. How are students going to navigate through your materials? How are they going to engage in the learning process when they are remote? There's lots of different things you can do. I'm going to give you just a couple of ideas to think about and some related strategies. We're going to divide this basically into two categories. One is how they're navigating the material to create new knowledge. And the second category is how you can assess that, or they can assess it on their own, so they gain some confidence that they're learning. A key term or key phrase I'd like you all to remember is students learn what they process. So simply distributing materials may be helpful, but we can't guarantee that they're going to learn it. As you know from your time in the classroom, sometimes you have to provide that pathway to process the material. So consider providing some sort of reflective exercise on just about everything you send out, so they can go through that process and they can learn how to learn if they need to. So summaries, synthesizing information. You can send out an article and require, a 25-word summary. You can do a basic reflective journal on Blackboard. All these are opportunities to have students process the material. If you simply put out a lecture with some slides using Panopto, that is half the battle. The other half is figuring out how they can engage with that lecture and make sure they're working through the materials as best they can. And there's some options for that. So for example, you could put in questions into your Panopto lecture, and we're working on a tutorial for that. Or you could require some sort of assignment or quiz after the lecture. But as much as possible, make sure they process those materials in some way. The students learn what they process. The second idea to remember is students benefit from multiple pathways to learn. Sorry about that typo there. So one way to think about this is presenting your material in more than one way. Consider multiple types. So if you give a reading on a topic, maybe also give some sort of summary video or annotations or some sort of learning object that covers the same ideas as that reading. This is good for everyone, not just learners who might need different pathways. Everyone benefits from having information and content presented in different ways. And so got some ideas there for you. You can look for videos, simulations, articles. You can set up a small group discussion, especially if you have a large class. You can break into groups and have students discuss something in that group. But if you can provide more than one pathway to cover that content, that's really going to help out, and students will benefit from that. So think about, go for at least two. Maybe present a reading, but also a short video from you or something you find online that's already created. That would be a good example. Or if you want them to practice a method, a calculation or a process, maybe demonstrate that practice, but also give them some examples from others on how it's done. So as they navigate new knowledge, do your best to do so in different formats. All right, so from the chat, some talk about students leaving a live session. So yeah, that's just something to think about, and looks like Mike is handling that pretty well. But if you do have a large group session, kind of like we do today, I have 86 people in right now. There are ways to do Zoom sessions in small rooms called breakout rooms that you can assign students to. You could also consider having multiple sessions. I know that's kind of a bigger lift, but maybe you provide 2 or 3 options for people to come if you want more of a personal touch. All right, let's move on to our second aspect of student content engagement, and that is assessing new knowledge. So they've encountered the content, that you've provided it to them in multiple ways. Now it's ready for them to assess. So it's ready for you to assess whether they got it or not. I'm going to ask you to think about assessment in 3 different ways. The first one is what we call diagnostic. This is just kind of taking the temperature, thumb on the pulse. Where are they? How much do they know? How much don't they know? How deep of dive do you have to go? So consider things like polling. We have Poll Everywhere as a polling software here at William & Mary. We have Google Forms, which is part of the G Suite, which you all have access to. And of course, we have Blackboard quizzes that you can set up and use in multiple ways. And there's tutorials on all these things on the web at our site and at IT's site. But for example, if I wanted to set up a poll about some of the readings that I sent for students to review, I could have very simple reading and reflective questions ready to go. And then at a certain time of day, I'm going to check that poll and see if the students are kind of getting it. You can do this live as well. If you're giving a mini lecture, partway through your lecture, you can put up a quick poll, students take it to see if they're getting what you're talking about. So that's a diagnostic, just a quick temperature check. Sometimes you call them checks for understanding. This is happening to help you adjust your instruction. Similar is something we call a formative assessment. This is how students can inform their own learning. They know themselves whether they're getting it or not, and they help learn. It helps them learn the content. So by completing this formative assessment, they're actually practicing. So these are things like discussions, collaborative annotations, peer feedback. You can set up easily a discussion board in Blackboard, or you could do a live discussion with Zoom or small groups. You could also do some sort of collaborative work with students, whether they're collaborating on a document in Google Docs, or perhaps they're watching a video you sent and taking notes on that video and sharing it with each other. And so through assessing whether they are getting this information and understanding it, it's helping form their learning experience. We have lots of examples of what this looks like, and feel free to drop into one of our office hour sessions if you want to talk about your specific situation. We can help point you to the tools, but just keep in mind that a lot of this formative option has to do with collaborative aspects. And finally, when coming to assessing new knowledge, we want you to think about summative options, and sometimes this is the most intimidating. This is that big paper at the end of the semester, or that big test, that big in-person test, or the oral presentation. And converting those to a remote situation might be a little tougher, but we can help. Blackboard tests are a great option. It take a little bit of work to format, but if you already have a paper test ready to go and you are comfortable converting it to a Blackboard test, you can go ahead and format it according to the formatting instructions in the tutorial, and you can convert it to a Blackboard test that's taken through the Blackboard system online, and you can set up all the parameters in terms of when the students take it, how long they have, what the rules are, that kind of thing.
Adam, I have a question about that.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Here. It's been a couple of years since I asked this question, but in light of our move over to online, what's the deal with respondus and locking down exams? Because previously, we didn't have that. So a student could open another tab and start Googling answers to a Blackboard test, Googling summaries of things to answer even to a written exam. Even if you give them, an essay question, let's say on a well-known novel, and they just open another window and their Spark Notes and Cliff Notes will provide the information, and they can be typing and copying some of that. I mean, of course, Safe Assign helps us with that, but do we have a lockdown version that we've come to now since we're going to be using Blackboard tests is the question.
That's a great question. Thanks for asking. So the short answer is no, we do not have a lockdown browser option right now. The Blackboard doesn't support that. However, there is proctoring available, and we're working on to see if there's a way to get that available for the whole campus, because right now it's a proctoring solution that's fee-based. So it's part of your course materials, and students pay for each assessment that has to be proctored.
When will we know about that? Because that impacts the kind of exam you would construct or quiz or anything. And that's a real issue with cheating. I mean, it's
Right.
pretty easy to open a browser and just start cheating in any kind of Blackboard diagnostic, whether it's written or, at least for the text I use, but even for multiple choice issues. So, and
yeah, hopefully we'll know soon. Hopefully we'll know soon. I think one of the issues that we have to encounter is when is it best to use those type of exams, or maybe you have a little bit lower stakes type of exam or quiz in Blackboard and you do other assessment practices. But hopefully we'll know in the next couple of days in terms of what that looks like. Some professors have gone to just kind of open book, and it's a harder exam, but they're allowed to use their materials. That's something
I use open book too, but there's still the issue of students texting or doing whatever at the same time in real time that it's going on. So you just want to, now that we've totally moved to this and you're not in the classroom monitoring, even if they're on the computer, you just, for integrity's sake, you just want to know, where would we look to find out the updates on that?
We're sending out updates every day, so it'll be in your email and on our instructional resilience site. I will make a note that that's definitely kind of top of mind in terms of being able to have good proctoring practices, and at least with the lockdown options. And so hopefully we'll have more. But yeah, it's a good point. It's not an easy challenge for sure.
Adam and Suzette, this is Paul. Anna, can I just chime in on that?
Sure.
It certainly doesn't address the great point you're raising, Suzette, but I do know that there is research that shows if at the beginning of an exam you prompt students to indicate that they will take the exam consistent with the honor code. There's research that shows that actually does have an effect on people's behavior. So it won't affect everybody, but it's at least an easy start without solving the whole problem.
Yeah, I do that, but I'm still already getting emails so that I understand what's coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's an issue. I do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, and you give it to them before, but I'm all for open book. That's how I do things. But there's still, even with that, I'm seeing a real sort of aggressive pushing of the boundaries that are beyond anything that I've ever seen before, which suggests that the lockdown is important if I'm really going to use the online thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely, that's a sticky one for sure. So yeah, thanks for bringing it up, and we'll keep you posted. Definitely not going to be the perfect solution for all the assessment matters.
Thanks a lot, Paul. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. All right, so we're going to spend our last few minutes before Q&A just looking at student-student engagement. So how are they collaborating? How can they be collaborative? And while there's lots of ideas here, we're trying to keep our solutions pretty streamlined. And so we're recommending that you take advantage of G Suite. Yes, we have Zoom, and yes, we have Office 365, and if you're comfortable with either of those, and the students are comfortable with those, they can use them. They could easily use Zoom for meeting amongst themselves, that kind of thing. But you're going to get the most bang for your buck out of the G Suite. As of Friday, the G Suite of tools is available to all instructors, even if you don't have a faculty Gmail account. And you can go to this website right here to log in. And if you don't already have a Gmail account, it's just these tools. It's not email, it's not calendar, it's just those tools there. And so it's something that will come in handy. So the G Suite is basically Google's answer to Microsoft. So you have your docs and you have your Excel spreadsheet, which they call Sheets, and they have all kinds of extra things there, but they have places to store files. They can do chats. They can create presentations, all these things. But the reason we like this for student-to-student collaboration is that many students are already familiar and comfortable with these tools, and they understand the different settings that can come up. I'm going to turn off my messaging service here in 1 second. There we go. So for example, they all have this this setting where you decide who has access and what they can do. And we really like that, because then you could, for example, let's say you have a class of 30, you could set up 3 groups of 10, start a document or a sheet or a site, and then you decide who has what privilege to either edit or share or comment, and they can collaborate in that way. And it works just like editing a doc in Word with track changes. You can track all the changes that are made, or you can make people full editors and they can go in and change it as they would like. So this is great for group projects, for even simple sites, things like that are going to be more of a presentation. This is a great way to collaborate. Another great thing is that you can comment directly. So you as an instructor can put in examples of what you would like to see, or you can highlight a specific piece of text and ask someone in your class to address it. You can give positive feedback, you can give constructive feedback, all kinds of different things. The creator of a document gets to decide who does what. So if you want just you to have the ability to comment, you can set that up. Never fear, as things change in a document, you have version history. So as long as you own that document or you own that slide deck, you can look at version history to see who did what. All right, if you are using this for some sort of assessment and you are, they're working on drafts of papers or things like that, again, you have the version history, but also you can provide different types of feedback. If you would like to give prompts, you can insert a link so they can check out something else. Some folks even like to use voice annotations, when they'll figure out a way to send a brief kind of voice snippet of feedback. There's lots of ways you can do that, but you can put just about anything you can think of in the comment section of all these collaborative tools. The Google apps are pretty intuitive. Students understand them. They're familiar with them. They're comfortable. But the Google's G Suite Learning Center is linked on our website under student collaboration, and it's a great place for the chance, just in case students are not super comfortable with everything, they can get advice on each of the apps there. And it's something to think about in terms of pointing students in the right direction and setting a good example. So you can show them what you want, but you can also point them to more help as they need. And you can check out our website for that. All right, checking my time here. We are right on time, 11:29. So we're going to leave this open for about 15 more minutes, and we're going to start working our way through questions. You can unmute yourself and just kind of shout it out, or you can put something in the chat. So looking at some of this stuff here. Feel free to speak out or put something in. Does the G Suite include Google Meet? Yes, it does. And Meet is kind of like it's like the new Hangouts. They have video chat, that kind of thing. Someone says the G Suite telling me that's not functioning at this time. It says that William and Mary account is disabled. That's not good. We will let people know about that. Is G Suite compliant with FERPA? Depends on what you mean. If someone wants to chime in and ask more specifically what they mean by that, you can't store grades in it. Okay, go ahead.
So that's my question, Paula. So for example, on annotating those documents, can you control what kinds of information is shown about who adds what?
So in terms of what information is shown, what do you mean? Like their personal, like say if I share something, it says Adam did this. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Within a class, you are allowed to there's no expectation of privacy of identity within a class. So it's okay if it shows their name or email.
Okay. Thanks.
And I do know that, and I get that question a lot. I think at some point there was some guidance from someone saying that you couldn't reveal student emails. That's not the case within a class. So that information was still kind of haunting me. But as long as you're within a classroom environment, you can do that. All right, other questions here.
So I see one of the questions here from Leah Shaw is about group messaging and asking if this is a good idea. I don't think you should try new things that you're not comfortable with. This is Mike Bloom speaking. It's probably much easier for you to have to let your students know that you're going to send one email through Blackboard once a day to inform them about certain things, and keep it there. If students need to ask you individual questions that you want to create an FAQ page for, that can go out in the email as well. So you can have them submit questions to you that you're going to answer on a daily basis. We have a week to figure this out, and there's no reason during this week to get overexcited. So I think that just putting out that information to everybody on a once a day basis while you answer questions is certainly enough to satisfy your students. But you just have to let them know what the expectations are first. And yeah, Slack is great. I see Morgan Davis says, I second Slack. It's great, but just remember, this is another hurdle for your students and for you to go over. So if you're comfortable with it, if their students are comfortable with it, great. But that's experimental. If you want to try Slack, if you want to try any tool, it's experimental. And I wouldn't jump into a new tool in this crisis situation unless there was real benefit for it, and unless I thought that I could really control it, because we're not going to have the capacity to help people with things like Slack.
Yep, well said, Mike. And remember, the students are taking more than one class. So if all 4 or 5 of their classes try to custom communication solution, that's a lot for them to keep up on. So just a good thing to remember the student perspective.
Hey, Adam, quick question. This is Paul again.
Go ahead, Paul.
On the student to, class communication, like what Mike was just saying about sending an email, maybe, through Blackboard, let's say once a day. Is there a way in Blackboard to pull up all the emails I've sent my class, or is it just once it leaves that screen, so if I wanted some kind of a running record, I guess I would just have to copy the email and put it into the Blackboard announcements. Is that the best solution there?
Yeah, unfortunately, it does not catalog your announcements or your email communications.
Okay, I'll just copy it into announcements.
Yeah, and that's actually a good policy, is to keep a running tally of your emails, is to just go ahead and put it in an announcement and let them know that this was originally an email, so they don't think it's a new announcement.
Okay, sure.
But Paul, is it Paul? Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
Suzette, there's what you're asking is an important question, and it's so annoying it doesn't keep it, but there's a way when you send an email also that there's a box that you check, and I think it sends it to you as the professor.
Oh, yeah.
So all of my emails come to me, and what I do in Outlook on the web is I just set up a folder each semester for each class. So it comes out and I get it too, and all the kids get it, and then I just drag it into the folder associated with the course. And that keeps a running tab of, so you remember what you said and you can search it, in addition to the announcements page if you don't want to, because they can get pretty messy. Sometimes there are different reasons why you want to send an email versus an announcement. In posting an announcement, they're different. Sometimes that's different, right?
Right.
Out to the class. Sometimes I don't want it to be an announcement to the class that's on the website. I just send it as an email. Sometimes, honestly, I just forget, and I just do the send to all in email, and that's actually easier for me, because your announcements page can get pretty messy. If every email you want to send to the kids is now becoming an announcement, you're going to have an announcement page that is pretty messy. So there's a good way for probably setting up a folder in your Outlook and getting that email sent to you yourself in the tool itself. So in the email in Blackboard, there's a little checkbox, and it allows you to send it to the sender or something like that. It says something like that, and you'll always have a copy of what you sent that way.
Yeah, I do that. I still get them. It'd be just, if there were a dashboard in Blackboard, it would be cool to,
wouldn't it?
see that running tally. But yeah,
Yeah.
but thanks for that though.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you're going to need to do what works for you. All of these are solutions. You just don't want to do something that you're not going to be consistent about.
Right.
So let's try to get through a few more of these. I'm just going kind of in order of the chat, and I'll do as quickly as possible. For students who may not have good internet connection, that is a possibility. We're working on some help for that, but on the off chance that you just can't count on people checking their email very often or getting on Blackboard, we will have some recommendations on how to possibly use texting and that kind of thing to text little updates, little assignments, things like that. That's going to be more case by case. So if you find yourself in a situation where a majority of your students don't have access or don't have reliable access, reach out directly and we'll work with you on a solution for that. Someone that wants clarification, it's okay to share student emails within a class. Yes, that is okay. You will not get FERPA'd. I'm on that committee, don't worry about it. Students are allowed to know that each other are in the classroom because they walk in the classroom, they see each other there. It's fine. You don't want to be posting phone numbers and mother's maiden names and that kind of thing, but emails are just fine.
And Vanessa's asking if Zoom works well over a smartphone. Absolutely, it does. So that's an option. However, you should also think about recording your Zoom sessions and then making it available to students who may not be able to access it in real time anyway. So that's probably a best practice, is to get into the habit of recording your Zoom session. And when you record it, if you record it to the cloud, it actually ends up on your Zoom page. If you attend one of our Zoom workshops, our Zoom webinars, and there's one tomorrow and there's one on Wednesday, you can check your schedule that I posted to the chat window above. You'll find out how to do all those things. And we also have those on our tutorials, and that's also listed on the link that I shared in the chat window.
Yep. If you do record your Zoom, just make sure you declare that at the beginning of your session so your students know, and if they don't want to be recorded, they can mute their camera and or their microphone.
Can they record the Zoom themselves?
They have to be co-hosts, so they will need permission to do that. And what's going to happen if they try to record it and they're just participants, it'll say get permission from the host. And then that's not going to send you a message or anything. They're actually going to have to contact you and say, I need permission. And you can do that on a case-by-case basis. If you have students with special needs, you may grant them permission as co-host to record the session. But I'd be wary about that.
Yeah.
And to Helen, teaching a class of 80, you want to shy away from the live lectures, that's absolutely fine. Your best option is a tool called Panopto, which is integrated with Blackboard. So you can reach out to keepteaching@wm.edu for help, or you can go to the Panopto webinar or check the Panopto tutorials on the help site. But essentially, you don't have to worry about managing file sizes or anything, because Panopto is the video recording, storage, and delivery platform linked right to Blackboard. So they'll be able to watch it right inside their Blackboard frame.
Right.
So there's no downloading needed.
And that doesn't mean you can't record in any platform that you like and then upload it to Panopto. You have both choices. So if you're familiar with a recording platform, or if you like Zoom and you want to record right in Zoom and then post it to Blackboard through Panopto, that's also an option. So whatever you're comfortable with. Panopto is the one size fits all solution, and it works like a one size fits all solution. There are better options for recording if you need those better options, but Panopto is usually just fine for people.
Leslie from the Accessibility Office is here, and just reminding folks that you can easily caption your Zoom lectures through Panopto. Zoom and Panopto talk to one another. Panopto has an auto captioning feature that's about 85 to 90% accurate, maybe even higher depending on the speaker. And those are very helpful as kind of a baseline level of captioning. And so Leslie has posted help for that online. How do you choose a background like Mike? Mike flew to Italy and is in some sort of...
No, this is actually Mexico City.
Mexico City, I was guessing, yeah.
So to choose a background like mine, if you hover over your stop your video icon on the bottom and you click on the arrow, you can see choose a virtual background. And if you click on that, you'll be able to choose or add a virtual background. Now you'll see I'm actually now here. I've got this nice green screen behind me. If you don't have a nice green screen, if you haven't painted your child's bedroom green at some point in the past, you may not have access to such a nice background, but it'll work in most cases. And then I can just switch my backgrounds. Here's a nice library. Here's a view of Manhattan. And here's my Mexico City one. And that's how you do it.
We have about 2 to 3 more minutes. Any other questions, feel free to speak out or post them in the chat. We recognize this is a very broad approach to engagement, so remember, we're happy to help you one-on-one as you need.
Well, let me just reiterate that we're going to be offering lots of help. So if you need to get in touch with us and you're not sure where to go, you can just email us at keepteaching@wm.edu, or you can visit our website at keepteaching.wm.edu, and most of the material that you're going to be able to find is there right now, but we're updating all the time. So if you have things that you'd like to be added to the website, we're looking for your help as well, things that would be important and interesting to your students and to you.
Mike, where do we find the change the background thing again? Where do we find
So if you hover over your Zoom settings, your menu down at the bottom,
yeah,
you'll see that's where you mute and that's where you can stop your video, but you have a little arrow next to stop video. And if you click on that, you'll see one of the options is choose a virtual background. Right. And then you can just choose, now here I am in front of the Golden Gate Bridge. So, or here I am in outer space.
Will asked if we have some resources on kinds of assignments done in Google Docs. Yes, we do. All good teaching is thievery, so we've stolen all kinds of stuff from the web. And if you want to email keepteaching@wm.edu with some ideas of things that you want to do, we can send you some use cases that might apply more to you. But there's lots of them out there, lots of creative things.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for coming. Don't forget, we offer webinars every day, 9, 11, 1, and 3. The schedule is posted. And then we have drop-in sessions and consultations as well.